This discovery gave me joy, indeed, for I had known some whose disfigurements had pained me exceedingly. No maimed forms ascend from gory fields of battle. No crippled people inhabit the soul worlds. Thank God for that. True, in the regions midway, there are many who, being insane or immersed in fantasies, insist on appearing as they were on earth, or even in worse plight. But this is not necessarily so, any more than the grimaces of a clown or a mountebank are natural expressions of his features. By this time I had also learned that, with the exception stated previously in the reference to the essence of things, the two worlds, earthly and spiritual, were in scarce any one thing alike, as had been taught by those whose books upon the subject I had lost so much valuable time in reading, finely written, eloquent books, truly, yet, after all, I found them now to be all with rich windows that exclude light, and passages that lead to nothing. My experience demonstrated that the two worlds are not equal, continuous, or even resemblant. In fact, they, being disparate, many failures must necessarily be made in attempting, in the present state of languages at least, to convey adequate verbal representations of things above to those below, not with the colloquial and literary, nor even the aid of modern philosophical, scientific, metaphysical, or theological techniques now in use among thinkers. But the people are longing for information respecting the soul's conditions subsequent to the departure of the rudimental scene. They want to know that the soul is, where it goes, how it gets there, and what are the environments thereafter. Consequently, the essay to impart the required information must be made, even at the risk of adding to the hundreds of failures already made. The worst vast, for instance, when I apply to the description about to be given, is not to be understood in the sense of enormousness, but in a different one altogether. Well, then, in a short time, the side of the sphere yielded to the applied force, and broke completely into form top and bottom, and the two sides instantly thereafter resolved themselves into a vast archway, vast in beauty, grandeur, color, form, and symbolic meaning. Today, the inviting passage thus presented, as if impelled by an invisible but powerful force, I slowly moved involuntarily. Upon reaching it, the entire sphere seemed to draw into me. I stepped over the threshold. I took a look at it, but lo! It had vanished. This taught me a lesson. I saw that if one chose to do so, he might, while on earth and in the middle state, draw his sphere within him, and lie concealed in the deeps of his own being, unreadable by any save God and the dwellers of the soul world. This is effected at first by strong efforts of the will. Both Napoleons are illustrative instances, which, soon becoming a habit, is effected by the soul mechanically. At first, upon finding myself alone, and my sphere absorbed, I could not comprehend the celestial magic by means of which it was effected. No opportunity, however, was afforded for the investigations of the mystery, for a crowd of new marvels rolled on me with such quick succession that my soul became at once deeply engaged. My vision was clear, distinct, and far-reaching. The thousands of objects existed upon all sides to attract it. The scene was the realization of the fairest, brightest Arcady of the rapt poet ever dreamed. Hundreds upon hundreds of the most beautiful of human creatures that imagination ever pictured were there, and all the glory and fete in heaven. Not a line of care or sorrow traced its course upon a single cheek or brow of the vast multitudes who thronged the glades and gardens of that wondrous realm. It was the actuality of the fairest ideal of earth's noblest poet, and something more, for there was a nameless something about it on the earth can never give. Magnificent and lofty trees, the movement of those very leaves was sweetest music, streams of living water, whose ripples flash back 10,000 magic hues of loveliness to stately but unmoving sun in the mid-heaven, flowers of rare conformation, whose colors and fragrance put earthly roses to the blush, unfolded their glory cups to God's bright centennial, and praised his name in incense offerings. Bowers of shrubs, resplendent meadows, stately groves, adown with sylvan glades, of which scores of merry children trooped, and the soul-wed lovers wandered, were a few of these things which I gazed in raptness whereof poets may conceive, but which colder souls will be the mysteries for long. Splendid palaces towered in the distance, while near at hand the green banks of many a singing brook, numberless cottages gemmed the scene. Even animals were there, some of familiar and well-known form, some of new and singular shape and peculiar grace. Birds, rare birds of the most brilliant plumage, played amidst the trees and warbled songs of strange melody and meaning. These, and 1,000 other things beside, not one of which I had ever imagined to exist, were constituents of the same scene which my eye now rested upon for the first time. Taken as a whole, the entire Vivarama was, in its nature and effect, at the time, incomprehensible, and at first somewhat oppressive. But this latter feeling was very ephemeral, and gave place to a delight at once pure, deep, and unalloyed. When this scene first burst upon me, my attitude was one of unmingling surprise, and I retained it all while my soul was drinking in the glory. Casting my eyes groundward, the vision rested upon the opaque, cloud-like soil, and while inwardly wondering whether the soil was really what it seemed to be or not, I heard my name called in well-remembered tones. Turning hastily, I found this sound came from the grove hard by, whence 3 persons were seen approaching me. They drew nearer, and I had no difficulty in recognizing one of the comers to be Nellie. I knew her by a general air, not from the appearance of a person, for this was entirely changed, and no longer appearing a mere child. She appeared to have reached the happy medium state wherein the girl just begins to be the woman. She was very pretty when she had assumed the status of a child, but now she fairly blazed with a beauty most transcendent. By her side moved a young and noble-looking man, yet one around whom there floated an atmosphere of power, will, and intenseness that inspired me at first with something very akin to awe. His garb was decidedly oriental, and became his features wonderfully, while at the same time it imparted a freedom and grace that added to, instead of detracting from, his dignity.